And I say thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Just a second, the introductions will be done, and then you can set up. Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Maybe you're muted. You're muted.
Okay. Good afternoon. Leonard Silk. Good afternoon, Doc.
Good afternoon.
Trying to get your profile, sir, on the internet. Just a second.
Okay.
Emmy, you can go ahead and introduce him, right?
Yes, I'll do that.
You can do the profile in between, okay?
Okay.
I don't even think that is necessary. Just tell them my name is Kanu Agabi, and that's enough.
We beg to differ. We can't have a big elephant in the house and just not say one or two things, sir.
Okay.
I've seen it on Wikipedia. 1 second, please.
My friend paid for it on his way out. My friend paid for it on his way out. Emily, I'm not sure what others are hearing you, but I can't.
Okay, but yes. 1 second, please. I have a profile from Wikipedia. That works.
Go ahead, Mabel.
All right then. Am I live now?
You've been live all this while.
Oh, really? 1 second. Good afternoon, distinguished members of the bar. It's my singular honor to introduce our speaker for today, Leonard Senior Advocate, Mr. Kanu Agabi, Godwin Agabi, SAN. He was a Minister for Justice within the period of June 1999 to January 2000. He was appointed Senior Advocate of Nigeria in 1997. He's had quite an inspiring career, and it's our honor to have him speak to us today. And without much ado, I'll yield to the Leonard Silk. Thank you very much, sir, for coming. And we're sorry for the technical glitch that we had to start a little bit behind schedule. Thank you very much, sir, for doing us the honors. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very, very much indeed. I am highly honored, and let me just hope that I do not disappoint you, but let me say what I have here to say. Am I still on?
You're on. Yes. We can hear you, sir.
All right. I thank you for the privilege of addressing this workshop. Criminal litigation is a field of the utmost importance. It is a field in which we are faltering and have been faltering for a number of reasons. The most prominent of which is that the police and the courts are overwhelmed. There can never be a better time than now for us to put together all our energies and experience as we strive to find solutions to the problems of crime and criminal litigation. There are in the nation today a large body of highly qualified men and women whose talents could help guide us out of the darkness in which we have found ourselves for a long time now. I mean, while this talent is available, it is unfortunate that it is not being properly used. This training which you are conducting cannot have come at a better time. It comes at a time when, due to the prevalence of crime, the notion is fast gaining ground that humility and humanism have no place in the investigation and prosecution of crime, or that when it comes to punishment, the judges have no discretion whatsoever. I do not agree with these notions. The ultimate objective of the investigation, prosecution, and punishment of crime must be to save and to rehabilitate those who have come under justifiable suspicion of crime or have been found guilty. We must not employ methods of despair, as we appear increasingly to be doing. We must be more positive and put less emphasis on our weaknesses. We should put more emphasis on our strengths. We're a good nation, and until we realize that, we will never be able to minimize the problems of violence and corruption that menace us on every side, every day. Let me emphasize that I would really like a situation in which we are more positive about ourselves, emphasize the positive aspects of the nation. We are an intelligent people. We're God-fearing people. I think so. We are very patient. Some of the things we have accommodated marvel other nations, but these are the things that have enabled us to survive as a nation. So I really would like to see the nation, see us be more positive about these things. In the past, criminal litigation was conducted predominantly in the magistrates' courts. The prosecutors were policemen and women. The defense was undertaken by lawyers whose experiences were varied and in many cases doubtful. And in many instances too, in those days, accused persons, defendants, were not represented by counsel. The crimes charged were often petty, except in cases of murder and manslaughter. With the advent of institutions like the EFCC and the ICPC, the picture changed as economic and financial crimes became rife. The people who came under suspicion of committing these crimes, that is, economic and financial crimes, were men and women of rank and position: governors, ministers, senators, and big businessmen and women. Most of the laws governing these matters were new. These laws were new to the judges, new to the prosecutors, and new to defense counsel. We can also say of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act that it is novel. I say nothing of the fact that the entire legal system is not a part of the culture and consciousness of the people. We are all familiar with the views of the historical school of jurisprudence, which is to the effect that the legal system of a nation, to be effective, must be rooted in the culture and consciousness of the people. We often worry about laws and procedure. We worry about manners, but the laws are not self-enforcing. They require good people to enforce them. And side by side with training lawyers and judges, we must address the problem of law enforcement arising from the fact that we do not appear to have enough good people to enforce the laws. Too many people in our country are holding offices for which they are not qualified. The investigation, prosecution, and defense of crime is grossly afflicted by this problem. The best, we must give encouragement to the system, and the best such encouragement, in my view, is to refrain from crime ourselves. Judges and prosecutors and defense counsel pay a high price for the work they do. As a result of this work, many of them have no time for themselves. They have no time for their families. They have no time for their friends. All they do is work. And they work with crime. They think about crime. They talk about crime. They read about crime. All their time and life is taken up with it. It is the same with the judges, the lawyers, and those who prosecute and defend. This is incessant exposure to evil gradually hardens and dehumanizes and diminishes them. And I consider this to be too high a price to pay when you are looking at the relationship between lawyers and judges and prosecutors and defendants. You must consider this background, that an individual for many years, year in, year out, some for 30, 40, 50 years, they're exposed to these crimes about which they can do nothing. It brutalizes them, it dehumanizes them. And so you see that playing out in the courts. Now, let me say that in relating with the judges, in relating with lawyers, with defendants, we should bear this in mind. The great Russian writer, Anton Chekhov, commented on this. And I find this comment remarkable. This is what he said. A judicial mistake is very possible as legal proceedings are conducted nowadays. And there is nothing to be wondered at it. People who have an official, professional relation to other men's sufferings, for instance, judges, police officers, doctors, in the course of time, through habit, grow so callous that they cannot, even if they wish it, take any but a formal attitude to their clients. In their respect, they are not different from the peasant who slaughters sheep and calves in the backyard and does not notice the blood. With this formal, soulless attitude to human personality, the judge needs but one thing: time, in order to deprive an innocent man of all rights of property and to condemn him to penal servitude. Only the time spent on performing certain formalities for which the judge is paid his salary, and then it is all over. Now, I will leave that comment and go on to what Marcus Tullius Cicero said about this. Of course, as lawyers, we're all familiar with Cicero. Cicero goes down in history as one of the greatest lawyers of all times. And this is what he said: by familiarizing ourselves with evil in all its forms, it has stifled the sentiments of pity in the hearts of a hitherto merciful people. For when, hour by hour, we never cease seeing or hearing about some appalling deed, the constant repetition of horrors drains even the gentlest natures of every feeling of humanity. What they are saying in brief is simply that, look, judges and lawyers and prosecutors become habituated to these things. They read about evil, they talk about evil, they write about evil, they litigate it, they adjudicate over it, and after a while, it begins to seem normal. They become indifferent, they become callous, and it affects their relationships with one another. Now, when you look at events in our country, after many years of dictatorship, we went from one extreme of dictatorship to the other extreme of liberalism. And crime is now at its highest peak. That's where it is. I mean, we glorify it by describing it as terrorism, but it's crime. We attribute it to headsmen. We attribute it to militants. We attribute it to agitators. But crime is so rife that the tendency has been to brutalize the minds of people, particularly practitioners, policemen, judges. And with the advent of politics, the pendulum swung to the other extreme of liberalism, where we think that the end justifies the means. We proceed on the false assumption that politics without force or without fraud cannot produce results. We aim at being strong in numbers without being strong in spirit and truth. We continue to labor under the illusion that in politics, good and bad are equal, that we can fight falsehood with falsehood or vice with vice. That is the spirit which is at work in the nation. Power and wealth are esteemed more than life. That's where we are. Wealth is everything. Power is everything. And life is nothing. That is the environment in which we are operating. So it affects us. It affects the lawyers. It affects the judges. It affects the investigators. Now, let me leave that general comment and say that we should, what we must do, I've been saying this again and again, and pardon me if you don't agree with this, our work is appointed by God. It is appointed by law, but ultimately it is appointed by God. We should do it on our knees. We should do it with prayer. We cannot do it with prayer. We cannot do it with passion. We cannot do it with energy and sincerity unless we are being honest. Now, let me say for defense counsel, because sometimes people say, look, we defend crime. We don't defend crime. We defend people who have come under suspicion. And it has become the norm in our country today that many people who have not come even under justifiable suspicion are brought to trial. We can't pass judgment on them. The work of passing judgment belongs to the judges. And the law under which defendants are charged entitles them to defend themselves, either personally or by counsel of their own choice. The law presumes them innocent, and we are not permitted to sit in judgment over them and refuse to defend them even before a court of law has pronounced on their guilt or innocence. Nor are judges permitted to assume that they are guilty simply because they have been brought to trial. What can we do when those who are imperiled come to us for assistance? Our hearts as lawyers must be with those in distress. Our hearts must be out there in the dock with those who are imperiled. The entire nation has become a vast house of mourning. Every day we hear tales of killings. The nation is proliferating with assassins and murderers, but I don't know of any assassin or any murderer who is standing trial right now for these offenses. There is some justification in the charge which has been leveled against some of us, lawyers. that no sooner do we arrive at the house of mourning, because the Bible says, look, all roads, it is better to go to the house of mourning than it is to go to the house of feasting. We have come under suspicion of turning the house of mourning into a house of feasting. We are being blamed, and this is true. People are blaming lawyers for the problems of the nation. They think that we are not helping enough or not helping at all. They think that we are exploiting the weaknesses in the system for our private gains. Well, our defense is that the weapons we are trying to use are the weapons of law, the weapons provided by law, and we are entitled to use them. I have made the point already that the institutions charged with this investigation, prosecution, and punishment of crime are overwhelmed. The courts are founded on the premises that crime will be limited. The police force is founded on the premise that crime will be limited, and the work that the policemen will be called upon to do will be limited. If it becomes unlimited, they cannot cope. They will become indifferent. If you go to the courts, on the list, you'll find 20, 30 cases. How does the judge cope? After a few months, after a few years, of course, he becomes indifferent. And once he becomes indifferent, that affects the relationship between himself and the lawyer. The lawyer becomes indifferent. The prosecutors become indifferent. And that is what is happening in our courts today. People have become indifferent because the nation is proliferating with all sorts of crimes, day in, day out. Now, how did we come by all this? It came from 1966, with the advent of military rule, when those who held power were assassinated and power taken from them. That gave rise to all sorts of problems. The most basic of which was that there were many opportunities for employment. We created 36 states. We created 774 local government councils and area councils. And we met the needs for of appointments that arose. We met those needs by appointing unqualified people. The problem that the nation is having today arises from the fact that too many people are holding offices for which they are not qualified. That is true. And that situation has been compounded by the fact that the states are such small units that they are easily pocketed by strong characters who rise into office as governors. So this has compounded the situation for our country, for our judiciary, for our practitioners. In virtually all the states, the structures for accountability have been destroyed. I'm trying to explain why the system is overwhelmed, why the courts are overwhelmed, why the police cannot cope, why the judges, after a while, will despair and become indifferent. Of course, we're all familiar with disregard for the Constitution and the rule of law. Some people say we don't have a Constitution, that the Constitution is a product of the military. Its declaration that it represents the will of the people is false. That's what they say. And they disregard the Constitution on that ground. We can't afford to disregard the Constitution. We must respect it as it is. We must amend it or promulgate a new Constitution. But as long as we have not done so, we must respect the existing Constitution. Others dismiss the nation as an artificial creation. I mean, in my view, all nations are artificial. If we dismiss the nation as artificial and refuse to abide by the laws, what we will have on our hands is anarchy. And we are fast approaching that. Then, of course, there is the fact that the nation is not self-reliant. I mean, we are importing all sorts of things. Our young people are unemployed. And after a while, they take to crime. This overwhelms the system. We must become a self-reliant nation if we are going to limit the works of the courts. There is, of course, the fact that the education that we are offering our young does not equip them for life. Our education is theoretical. It is it makes the young people proud and distant from the community. It deculturizes them. They have no, they cannot put this education to any kind of practical use. And then, of course, I mean, we are all familiar with the fact that we have not adapted the foreign laws that govern our system to meet local circumstances. We're operating a presidential system, which is actually a dictatorship under the Constitution. In this presidential system, all powers are vested in one man at the federal level, in the president, at the states, in the governors, in the hope that all this power will be exercised to bind the nation together. A presidential system of government is that system which a nation adopts when it is contending with divisive tendencies. But the failure to exercise that power for many years now is dividing the nation more and more and more. Of course, we are all familiar with the disobedience of court orders, the failure of the government to exercise strong political will. And so let me say a word about those who stand trial. It is my experience that very often prosecutors are impolite to those who are standing trial. Just because a person has come under suspicion and is on trial doesn't mean that we should become impolite or even rude. Look at the bail that we grant. The bail that the courts grant are illusions. The principle governing the imposition of sentences or of fines is that if a court resolves to impose a fine, it should be within the means of the offender. That's the rule. That rule applies to bail. If a court decides to grant bail, that bail must be affordable. The defendant must be able to take it. But very often, bail is such that it can't be taken. Bring 2 directors, bring 3 directors, bring this and bring that. So all these kinds of things are compounding the system, congesting our courts, congesting our prisons, brutalizing the minds of judges, brutalizing the minds of prosecutors and lawyers, and not helping the situation at all. But let me say something about lawyers. We must have confidence in ourselves. Lawyers are required to have confidence in themselves. That confidence must be rooted in their knowledge of the law and commitment to justice. We must know the law. The lawyer must know the law. He must be well read. That is why we are called learned. The lawyer must truly be learned. He must know history. He must have a sense of family. He must be humane. But let me emphasize that he must be well-read. If he's not well-read, there will be problems. Let me also make the comment that we are not going to help the system by continuing to proclaim the weaknesses of our judges. Of course, we don't have the judges are not perfect. Some are making mistakes, but on the whole, we must commend the judiciary. But where mistakes are being made, we are not going to help the situation by continuing to put the emphasis on the weaknesses of the judiciary. Our duty of respect for the judiciary, for judges, is unqualified. And if we feel that they are not doing well, if we feel that they have violated the ethics, if we feel that they have fallen short, all we need to do is show them respect and report them to the appropriate authorities. It is our duty to guide the judges. We must do that. It is the duty of the lawyer to guide the judge to look inwards for solutions. We can't go on looking outward for solutions. We must look inwards. And as lawyers, that's what we must do, guide them to do so. At the same time, the judges must conduct themselves in such a way that litigants are not encouraged to continue to file frivolous actions because they believe that they can exploit the system and get away with it. That is very, very important. A lot of the frivolous actions which are being filed in our courts today arise from the fact that many, many litigants are under the illusion that, look, I can exploit the system. I can get away with it. So it is incumbent on our judges to conduct themselves in such a way that litigants are not encouraged to bring the kinds of actions that they are bringing. At the same time, let me say that no judiciary can save a nation that is totally lacking in moderation. Right now, the nation is lacking in moderation. We are lacking in moderation. And how can the judge save such a nation? How can judges save such a nation? I have made a point already. The government must approach the people from a positive premise. We should not go about branding the nation as corrupt. We cannot solve the problem by doing that. Let us be more positive. The problems that we are having are posed by just a few people. These are problems of the leadership. These are not problems of the generality of the people. And it is this same leadership that is branding the nation as corrupt. We're a good people. We're an honest people. We're a God-fearing people. We are very resilient. We are very intelligent. We are very patient. And that's why the nation survives. So let me just briefly say that duties of counsel to the court, we all know this. Nobody can say he's a lawyer and doesn't know that his duty to the court is to know the law, to read, not to mislead the court, to treat the court with respect. We must treat the court with respect. We can't sit in judgment over the judges. Our duty of respect for judges is unqualified. Our duty is to assist the court, to maintain the highest levels of integrity, to tell our clients the truth, not to file cases which we know will fail, not to collect huge sums from litigants by giving them the impression that they have a good case when we know that they don't have a good case. We can't do that. We have a duty to give our clients the best advice. And that means that we must ourselves be educated. We know what it is we're advising about. Well, I think these are all matters that we are all familiar with. Let me leave it at that and say that in the course of discussing this matter, maybe I will shed more light on the areas that I have not been able to touch upon and learn from you gentlemen the things that you have to present yourselves. Thank you very much. I'm through now.
Okay. Thank you, Leonard Silk. Sarah or Mabel, are you any one of you there?
Yes, I am here. Thank you. Thank you, Leonard Silk. I was copiously taking notes, and I must really commend you, Leonard Silk, for taking our time to remind legal minds again what our roles are as legal practitioners. Our confidence is rooted in our knowledge. We must well read.
Mabel, your network is really I don't know if we're not getting you very well.
Remind ourselves that we must be of family and we must be human. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. I was just trying to do a quick recap of the things I learned from Leonard Silk this morning. Our colleagues, your questions are on the Q&A box. Please share your questions. But I was just going over some of the things I learned. I was copiously writing when Leonard Silk was speaking. And I did say that it behoves on us as legal practitioners to be humane, to remain very, very knowledgeable, to be relevant. We must be connoisseurs of history. We must have a sense of family. We must, at all times, be on top of our knowledge of the law, and therein the reason why we have challenges in our criminal administration of justice. It includes, which he highlighted, why our judges are overwhelmed, why the prosecutors are overwhelmed, and indeed our nation as a whole, our legal system, our constitution, the need for the respect for the rule of law, and then generally an overview. I must thank Leonard Silk for stirring our minds and reminding us some of these things, which is very crucial and very important. We have our colleagues are sharing their questions, and it appears they are in the chat box and not in the Q&A.
I'm not seeing any myself here.
Yes. So Gabriel, for instance, says, "Good afternoon, everyone. This is why I like to call Leonard Silk Kanu Agabi epistle to the legal profession. This is the kind of talk or epistle desperately needs to sanitize the legal system in our nation." I'll plead with our colleagues to send the questions to the Q&A box. Mohammed Bashir says, in juvenile prosecution, to what extent can the court go to implore moral when such an offender has become a recidivist? This is from Mohammed Bashir Bard.
Should I proceed to answer straight away?
Yes, Leonard Silk. Thank you very much, sir.
Well, this is truly something lamentable because, look, the juvenile problem is truly, truly overwhelming. Do we really have juvenile courts anymore? Look, the nation is proliferating with crime, with assassins, with murderers. Nobody is prosecuting them. We are not prosecuting adult criminals. Can we say that we are prosecuting juvenile criminals? They are just allowed to wander the streets. This is the first time for a long time that I am even hearing this word juvenile. Many communities have been wiped out. We are all aware of that. Rendered homeless. And are we really talking about juvenile crimes? We must address the problem of education. We must address the problem of employment. We must address the problem of competence for the offices that we hold. Because we are not addressing these matters, we are overwhelmed. There is no distinction right now between juvenile criminals and adult criminals. There's no distinction. I mean, the prosecution of crime is only on the fringe. I don't know that juvenile criminals are being prosecuted. I'm not aware of that. What I know is that the vast majority of criminals are not being prosecuted. Those whom we hear about are high-profile criminals. Those who have come under suspicion of money laundering, of corruption. These are the crimes we hear about. We don't hear about murder. We don't hear about juvenile crimes. That's my answer.
Thank you, Leonard Silk. There's another question here from Ibrahim Mohammed Usman. And I read, he says, good afternoon, sir, for this wonderful presentation. I would want to hear your view on the innovations brought about by the ACJA 2015 and the new Correctional Service Act 2019 on the issue of victim offender mediation and how effective it is in addressing the issue of congestion in our detention center. Also, I will want to hear your input on the parole sentencing as well as community service implementation. Thank you, sir. Ibrahim Mohammed Usman is from Kano.
Let me take them one by one. Please, just go through it again.
The first one is the innovation that has been brought about by the ACJA 2015 and the new Correctional Service Act, particularly on the issue of victim offender mediation. How effective it is in addressing the issue of congestion in our detention center.
All right. Let me say that, as they say, these rules are very, very good indeed. They are excellent. I am happy that the government is trying to take measures to reduce congestion in the courts and in our prisons. That we're talking about mediation, we are talking about the Administration of Criminal Justice Act as a way of aiding and facilitating this speedy dispensation of justice. But the truth is this: these rules, these laws, they are not self-enforcing. They don't enforce themselves. They require good people to enforce them. Are we enforcing them? We are not enforcing them. If you go to the prisons, I had occasion to visit the prisons once, and I wept. Who are the prisoners? The prisoners are young children, little boys and girls. They are the ones in prison. The prisons are congested with young people who are taken from the streets and have no shorties to take them on bail. So this victim of this mediation things, they are not working. They are simply not working. And when you say to the courts that, look, when it comes to punishment, you have a discretion. We seem to think that the courts have no discretion, that prison is the only available punishment. No. You made mention of community sentencing. Why not? In many nations, a man is sentenced and ordered to serve it at home, serve the community, do something. We're not doing all that. These rules exist in the books. Nobody's giving effect to them. They don't enforce themselves. They need good people to enforce them. Why is it that we don't have the good people to give effect to these laws? It is because too often we appoint people who are not qualified. And one of the greatest problems afflicting the nation today is the rigid boundary of the states. The fact that labor is not mobile. Indigents of one state cannot work in other states, no matter how qualified they are. And the indigents of the states will be appointed to high offices, even if they're not qualified. So these things are, these are the problems that we have to contend with. These provisions are there, but we don't give effect to them because the competent people who should give effect to them are not there. Please.
Thank you, Lenesik. I think Mabel is out, but I think I would like to draw your attention to another very interesting question, which maybe it can flow from the one you've just answered. So I'll mention that one and then I'll go to the next one. It's from Mohammed Bashir. He says, Lenesik, thank you for your elucidation. However, where there has come upon our land a situation whereby we have children between the ages of 10 to 17 participate in heinous crimes like theft, robbery, and cyber infiltration. Well, that sounds more like a comment than a question, but I think he was just trying to mention the fact that your reference to children being in prison is because they are now participating in very heinous crimes like robbery and cyber infiltration and theft. You have anything to say in addition to what you have said?
Yes, I have something to say. What kind of education are we giving them? What kind of education are we giving them? We are not giving them practical education. That is, if we educate them at all. Look, we have a real problem of corruption. Corruption is a huge problem. The resources that should be available for the education of young people is being stolen. There's no doubt about that. Do we have teachers? Do we have teachers? Do we have qualified teachers? If you go to many of the rural communities, there are no schools. Many communities have been wiped out. Many villages have been wiped out. Many families have been wiped out. Children have been abducted from schools. And little or nothing is being done about this. Many children have no parents. So they end up in crime. Let me ask you, if you were hungry day in, day out for 1 week, for 2 weeks, for a month, for a year. If you were homeless, if you had no hope, what will you do? If you were a child, what would you do? Even if you were an adult. The situation in our country today has arisen from the fact that, the nation is proliferating with crime and corruption arising from leadership. That is true. Please go to the villages and tell me if there are teachers there. Teachers are unpaid for months, for years even. Civil servants are not paid. How do they educate their children? At the same time, they see people making investments, huge investments, the sources of which are doubtful. So how do you tell them not to follow this terrible example? The problem is there, but it is coming from the leadership. Let me ask you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Do you say that we are paying teachers the right salaries or paying them at all? Do you say so? Do you say that civil servants are being paid regularly in the states? Are they? Do you say that the salaries which they are paid can cope? We must address these problems. Do you say that corruption is being punished? Do you say that we have the machinery to investigate crime? We are overwhelmed. The machinery has collapsed. These institutions were founded on the premise that crime will be unlimited or will be limited, but crime is unlimited. They can't cope. Please.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
A lot of questions have come in, and this is quite apt on the topic that you have just given a lecture on. So I'll just try and take some of them. Maybe, are you here now so that you handle this? You were out for a minute. Okay, before maybe hooks up, let me take one.
I think that the network is going in and out because of the
okay, you are still having. Okay, let me just continue because I think
weather conditions around.
Yes, I think so too. I'm just lucky to have fiber optic connection, so it's not really affecting me that much. All right, let me just take this question from Mohammed Nazir Farouk. He says, thank you, NSC, for the wonderful presentation. It's from Kano. By the new provisions of the ACJA, a defendant's statement shall always be taken in the presence of his lawyer. Is there any exception to this rule in the pronouncement of the Apex Court?
Well, let me say that I can't answer that question offhand, but if I'm going by just my own notions, I'm not aware of any exceptions. I'm not aware of any exceptions.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
Then Ibrahim Mohammed Husman says, thank you very much, sir. There has been a controversy here on the recurring decimal of cases of phone snatching, and many stakeholders have called for the charging of phone snatchers with the offense of armed robbery. Is that possible, sir?
Well, I wouldn't say so. We have to ask ourselves, why are they snatching phones? Why are young people out on the streets snatching phones? Why? It is because we have denied them the basic qualifications that they need to live their lives. We're not training them. I mean, even if they were animals, we should train them. Those who keep dogs are required to train them. You're not allowed to keep a dog and let it be wild. You're not allowed to do that. Why is it that we go unpunished for not training our children. Why? We punish them. Sometimes they are executed on the spot. Why? Because we can get them. You see them on the streets. They catch a young criminal. They burn him to death right there. Whereas, I mean, some other person is stealing hundreds of billions and getting away with it. Ask yourself, why are these boys out on the streets snatching phones? Why? It is because we don't give them any education. The education that we give to them is theoretical. It does not equip them for life. It makes them proud and distant from the community. That is, if they have any education at all. They are not taught any skills. They have not been taught any skills. How do you expect them to have skills when we have not taught them any skills?
Okay.
What do you expect them to do? Tell me, what do you expect them to do when day in, day out, they are hungry? They are homeless. They are hopeless. What do you expect them to do? It brutalizes their minds. It turns them into animals. They will steal. They will kill. We must train our children. We must give them education, practical education. Look at the borders. The borders are wide open for imports. A nation that is producing nothing is importing everything. How are you going to make young people self-reliant when you are importing everything?
Okay.
We justify ourselves. Oh, it's globalization. It's globalization. Globalization means that you should not produce. It means that you should do nothing, even when you are young people are stranded on the streets. Go to the streets and see our young people running between vehicles, trying to sell the goods of other nations. Why?
Okay, sir. I think the questionnaire was trying to also share your own position. Just that he was bringing to fore the argument that those people caught through snatching should be tried for the offense of armed robbery. So he was asking if that was possible.
And
I think
that was that why don't we ask ourselves why it is that that comes about? We must ask ourselves why it is so. Look,
okay,
let me tell you about myself. If I were hungry day in, day out for months, if I were homeless, if I couldn't feed my children, if I couldn't clothe them, if I couldn't pay their fees, am I a parent? I'm not a parent. I'm not qualified to be called a parent. I will gradually, slowly degenerate into these conditions that we are condemning as armed robbery. You call it armed robbery? What do you call it when a person sitting in the office has taken hundreds of billions so that the young boy on the street is rendered homeless and hopeless and hungry?
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
We have an anonymous attendee asking, what are your suggestions for the realization of enforcement and actualization of non-custodial sentences and measures that should be taken to ensure that convicts are subjected to skill acquisition and community rehabilitation as a way forward to tackle the menace of crimes involving young people?
Well, it begins with appointing the right people to high offices. We must appoint qualified people. We must have fair elections so that the right people emerge. That's where it starts. Because if the wrong people are holding office and manipulating the nation and manipulating the states and manipulating the local governments and taking resources to themselves, it is not possible to do these things that we're talking about. It begins with having the right people in office. It begins over the years, and this is true. Over the years, our elections have not been transparent, with the result that the enemies of the nation have emerged in the past. I'm not talking about the present. I won't comment on the present since these matters are being litigated. But the past, it is so. So that's where it starts. We must appoint people, elect the right people to high offices. Look, it started in 1967 when states were created. With the creation of states, we multiplied offices. Before states were created, we were having manpower problems. Those manpower problems were compounded by the creation of states. We went from 4 regions to 12 states, to 18, to 24, to 36, to 774 local governments and area councils. And each time we multiplied offices, we filled those offices by appointing unqualified people. Then the boundaries of the states are rigid. A non-indigent cannot work in a state other than his own, no matter how qualified he is. So after so many years, this has compounded the situation. It begins with appointing the right people to offices.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
There is one question here, said, good afternoon, Lenesik. What is your suggestion on how can NBA through the judiciary address the issue of lawyers allowing their clients to charge persons to magistrate courts which have no jurisdiction to hear certain offenses, say land matters, with the intention of detaining them while waiting for DPP advice, which might take years?
Yes, that is true. That is happening all the time. The system is being abused. The system is being grossly abused. The law enforcement institutions are being used to prosecute and, private wrongs. That's happening. And again, I said, it comes about because we have reached a situation at which people think that, look, I can manipulate the system. If I can manipulate it, and people are manipulating it and getting away with it. What do we do? That is the question. We have to equip the police. We have to educate the police. We have to give them the resources they need to do their work. We have to train them. We have to pay them the right salaries. We are not paying the police the right salaries. Many of them have no accommodation. They don't have. Some of them have no shoes. I mean, the conditions under which the police work are inhuman. How do you expect them to cope? Look at the judges. They are poorly paid. And this is true. So if we are going to solve this problem, we must begin by, training our policemen, equipping them, paying them the right salaries, giving the judges the right salaries. We must do that. If we don't do that and think that we can somehow solve the problem, we're having illusions.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Bode Oporu says, thanks, sir, for the insightful teaching. My question is, how the issue of corruption can be handled in a legal system where the common man conception about the lawyers and judges no longer mean justice to them? And will it not take us to self-help?
Yes, it is doing so. It is taking us to self-help. And you are right in thinking that we lawyers are not helping. That is true. We are exploiting the situation. We are. We're exploiting it. We are. And today, we are producing on the average, I don't know if it's 2,000 or 4,000 lawyers a year. The training of these lawyers poses a problem. They come directly into the market. They come directly into the courts. These are huge problems. They are not problems that you can solve overnight. They are not problems that have arisen overnight. They are problems that have been, coming and coming and coming ever since we became an independent nation. So truly, there is something that the legal profession needs to do about itself. We need to come down, we need to sit together and agree on a way of helping the nation. The legal profession must, as a body, help the nation. We must help the nation.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
We have a question here from Mr. Isaac Damisa. It's an interesting one. He says, my question is, how can the Nigerian legal system reassure the Nigerian litigant today? Because every litigant in Nigeria today has no faith and confidence in the judiciary. Because in today's Nigerian judicial system, the highest bidders are those who can manipulate the system to frustrate others. If this belief is not reversed, the work of the lawyer is made difficult. How can this confidence be regained?
Well, let me tell you this. The judiciary is not perfect, but I am one of those who have confidence in the judiciary. I have confidence in the judiciary. I appreciate the sacrifices that the judges are making. The judges are making great sacrifices. Many of them work night and day. You go to the courts, they have 30, 40 cases on their lists. You go to the Supreme Court, there are as many cases in the Supreme Court as there are in any regular court. They are working very, very hard. I can tell you that. At the same time, there are here and there judges who are making mistakes. That is happening in every profession. There are doctors who are not competent. There are teachers who are not competent. There are engineers who are not competent. Accountants are making mistakes. We're all making mistakes. But when I look at the three arms of government, the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, the most competent, the most transparent is the judiciary. It is. And that is why the nation continues to survive. Never mind that here and there are judgments that we can fault.
Thank you, sir.
It will take some time to solve these problems.
Okay.
Yes, it will take some time. And if we try to solve them radically, we can only create more problems.
Thank you, sir. There's a question here from Mohamed Bashir. He doesn't seem to agree with you. I'll read it. He said, Lenesik, I want to respectfully disagree with the notion that because the government is not doing enough, it's a reason why young persons in crime are excusable. if all of us claim that because teachers are not paid enough, I think that's what they wanted to write, is the reason why we in the academy extort the students. I don't know what you're saying. As a former AG, I want to assume that the learner is familiar with the concept of international relations. Well, I think he's just trying to say that your views about linking the dysfunctional society to the governmental inadequacies is something he does not agree with. I don't know if you want to just.
I respect that view. I respect it. We cannot all be agreed on this, but speaking as a parent, as somebody who has held a public office, I can see where this problem is coming from. You see, if you go behind the young person who has just picked a phone, you may find that he is homeless. You may find that he is hungry. You may find that he has no hope. You may find that he has no skills. He's not trained for anything. You may find that, I mean, come the night, he has no place to sleep. So these things brutalize the minds of those of the victims. That's what I'm saying. I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying that, look, a young person is justified to steal because he's homeless, because he's hopeless, because he's hungry. I'm not justifying it. I mean, speaking for myself, my father told me very early when I was a child and I was hungry that, look, when you are hungry, bait. That's what my father said. And I can say that to you. When you are hungry, bait. But can you? It's a simple, inexpensive solution. But can you do it? Can you say to your son, when you are hungry, bait, and you don't give him food? And that goes on from week to week, month to month, year to year. And you say that his mind will not be brutalized. He will not kill. He will not steal. I'm not justifying it. I'm telling you how it comes about. That if you put your hand in fire, it will burn you.
Thank you very much, sir. I think the point is well noted. We have Festus Adeboyaku. He says he commends you for the presentation and he has two questions. One is on the fact that the holding charge is not practicable under our law, but the police still fall victim to same, and they bring frivolous charges to court, resulting to holding charges. That's his first question. I think he is probably quarreling with the fact that charges are being brought that a particular court may not be able to have jurisdiction to hear it, and the court would have to just perhaps detain people unjustly before. And I think that's what he's trying to say. Then the second aspect of his question is, what can you say, sir, about the prosecutorial power of police? Is this not long overdue to stop the police who investigates the crime and still go ahead to prosecute them?
Well, you see, Rome was not built in a day, as they say. Today, when I was Attorney General, there were in the police force at that time over 300 lawyers who were in the police force. I believe that the number is much, much greater today. And all we need to do is train them to prosecute properly. Train them to prosecute honestly and transparently. You know, what do you do? If you want to vest that responsibility elsewhere, you have to train those people. It takes time. This is where we have started. We are making progress. When I started my practice, I don't know of any lawyers in the police force who were coming out to prosecute crimes. No, I don't know. But now, 50 years later, there are many, many policemen who are trained, who are lawyers. They were not trained in police colleges. They were trained in our universities and law schools. They are competent people to prosecute cases. Whatever problem is afflicting them is the same problem that is afflicting the medical profession. It is the same problem that is afflicting the teaching profession. You know, somebody came to me once and he wanted me to find employment for his son. And he said to me, look, my son is so bad, he couldn't even get a job as a teacher. That's how he felt about the teaching profession, that no matter how bad you are, you should be able to get a job as a teacher. That's how he felt. And I wouldn't be surprised if somebody begins to say that, oh, look, no matter how bad you are, you should be able to be a lawyer, something like that, or a doctor. It affects all the professions.
Thank you very much, sir.
But let me emphasize that,
Okay.
look, we are making progress. We are making progress. We are not where we ought to be, but we are making progress. If we are not careful, if we try to hurry things up, that's what we are doing. We are trying to hurry things up when we appoint unqualified people.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Alassane Mwazo says, what are the things to work on for one to succeed as a criminal litigation lawyer? That question, I want to merge it with the question from Mohammed Nazir Farouk, which is almost on the same kind of subject. He says, I'm quite sure lawyers will benefit from this question. I've watched your cross-examination closely, especially in Sylvester Nguta J case. How do I become an outstanding and excellent cross-examiner like you, sir? Book recommendation can also be appreciated. So, I mean, that is personal development questions from the two questions.
Well, let me thank him for his kind words. I thank him very much indeed for his kind words. A lawyer should know the law, know the facts. Be honest about your work. Pray about it. Don't go into legal practice without much prayer. You must be on your knees practicing law. You must read your books. Read your books in and out. Read your Bible. Read your Quran. Be honest about it. You know, we have the notion that you just have to learn some tricks. There are no tricks. Master the facts of the case. Master the law. If you know the facts, if you know the law, if you pray about it, you will get guidance. It calls for passion. You see, very often we take on cases thoughtlessly. Our objective is to make money out of it. God is not going to guide you in doing a case if he looks into your heart and finds that your objective is just to make money. You are not out to serve. As lawyers, it is the law that we serve. St. Paul said, whether you are a servant or a slave, it is the law that you serve. It is the law that we serve. If we put money first, we will stumble on it. We can't get the proper guidance. But if we are committed to service, if we are committed to the client does not come to you to make you rich. The client comes to you so that you can help him. He has a problem. He needs help. If you are committed to helping him, you will be able to find a solution.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We have this from Wahid Kazim. He says, thank you, Leonard Sik, sir. My question borders on our prosecution system. Sir, in my little years of practice in criminal matter, I've come to the conclusion that in most cases, it's the victim family that takes up financial responsibilities for the prosecution of crimes, which, in my opinion, leaves room for the criminals who have money to spend to get away with crimes. Even an heinous crime as murder as against the victim deceased, whose family are poor, sir. What mechanism can be put in place to check, meet, and do right justice without the victim deceased family having to worry about financing the whole process of prosecution, including investigation, and how to do for justice to be well served?
Yes. A woman's son was killed many years ago. And she came to me. She said, look, I want you to take me to the police and tell them to take me to the man who killed my son so that he can kill me. That's what she wanted. She didn't want the killer prosecuted. She wanted the killer to kill her. That's what she wanted. She said, take me to the police so that the police can take me to the man who killed my son so that I can be killed by that man too. But then she said that, look, the police have asked me for 1,000 naira to buy papers. They don't have papers. Then the man who was sitting with me gave her 1,000 naira, and she knelt down and thanked him for 1,000. A woman whose son had been killed was being required to provide 1,000 naira so that they could buy papers. Now, it's true that they don't have papers. They don't. If you go to many police stations in the rural areas, they don't have papers. They don't have typewriters. They don't have the equipment to work with. They can't transport themselves from one place to another. This is true. And so we must fund the police force. We must fund them. We must train them. We must pay them the right salaries. If we don't do that, at one time, I had occasion to address the police, and I said to them, look, everybody is condemning the police force. But if we are going to bring our policemen from heaven, we should bring the legislators from there too. We should bring governors from there. We should bring ministers from heaven. You can't bring only policemen. These problems that the police are having is posed by the executive. They are not provided for. Please. Many policemen have no homes. They can't cope. The constant exposure of the police to crimes about which they can do nothing only serves to brutalize their minds and to destroy them. So the government must take the issue of funding the police seriously. We must take that seriously. Do you know how many policemen are killed every day in this country? I can give you the figure when I was Attorney General, and it increases every day. The police are being killed. They have no protection. They have no equipment. They have no materials to work with. Their salaries are so poor. It is unimaginable. Please. That's it.
Thank you very much, sir. We have Gabriel Adewara say, let us seek, if he was asking you directly, will let us seek Kanu Agabi recommend restructuring our legal educational system along the American approach of requiring a first degree in any field before being admitted to study law and become a practitioner?
Well, I wouldn't, if I wouldn't recommend that. I wouldn't insist on that. But it is a good thing to do, to say, look, but that's not the problem. The problem is really that the fundamental education, primary education, the primary education. I'm a lawyer who I went into law school with my higher school certificate. I didn't go to law school as a graduate from another field. But my basic education was sound. I went to a primary school that taught me things. I went to a secondary school that taught me things. I went to a higher school that taught me things. I read books. I had good teachers. My school was equipped. So that is the problem. The problem is not that the many graduates today have education that can be described as inadequate. And if you push them from there to go and study law, that doesn't solve the problem. We must solve the problem at the primary school level. We must solve the problem at the higher school level or at the secondary school level. We must have good teachers in primary schools. If you go to the villages, the primary schools are not functioning. The children are just wandering about. There are no teachers. Where there are teachers, the teachers are not qualified. You go to secondary schools, it's the same thing. And somehow they manipulate themselves into universities and come out with degrees. They do. Then you say that with these degrees, they should now study law. It makes no difference. So that's my answer.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
As Afsat Umar says, where the DPP writes on a charge declined by DPP office, can the magistrate still proceed on the same charge, thereby detaining the suspect at the correctional center?
Well, the magistrate and the judges, they have power under the law to look at the charge, to look at the evidence, and to say, I will not entertain this. The judge can do that. He reads the proof of evidence. He reads the charge. It is frivolous. He can see it. A judge, a court has all the inference powers and sanctions of a court of law. The judge has those powers. He doesn't have to wait until they come and present a frivolous thing in court. Right in his chambers, he can look at the charge and say, look, there's nothing in this. He can look at the proof of evidence. He has all the inherent powers and sanctions of a court of law under the Constitution.
I think, Lenesik, the question was the flip side of that argument, which is a situation where the DPP office has declined to prosecute and the magistrate now decides to proceed.
That's what I'm saying. That the magistrate can look at it. Yes, the magistrate can look at it and say, look, I see an offense here. Okay. The magistrate can look at it and say, well, I agree that the DPP is right. There is nothing to charge. But what requires to be done most often is for the magistrate to look at it and say, look, this is frivolous. This is utterly frivolous. Somebody has used his connections with the system to bring his enemy to court. The magistrate or the judge ought to be able to look at the proof of evidence, look at the charge, and say, I am not going to be implicated in the victimization of this person. I dismiss it.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Bello Fadile wants to know your views on plea bargain as one of the ways to reduce prosecution and congestion in our correctional facilities.
I agree.
What's your view on plea bargain?
I agree with it. I agree with it. I agree with plea bargaining. Why not? If it is done sincerely, if it is done properly. For instance, plea bargain. A person is alleged to have stolen 10,000 naira. He brings back the 10,000. He says, look, forgive me. I was desperate when I took this money. But here it is. Take it back. Forgive me. I plead guilty. Let me go. Why not? A man like that should be let go. That's plea bargain.
Yes. Okay. An anonymous attendee wants to know what a lawyer can do when an accused person is brought from another jurisdiction to another jurisdiction to stand trial for a variable offense. A magistrate insists that the shorties must be residents of the jurisdiction of the trial court where the accused person does not have relatives.
Yes, that is wrong. You see, many of the, and I made this comment in the course of my presentation. You know, bail is granted as an illusion. The magistrate knows that, look, this bail cannot be afforded. A magistrate or a judge should not grant bail that is not affordable. Bail must be affordable. It is like a fine. If a judge or a magistrate decides to impose a fine, the rule is that the fine to be imposed must be within the means of the offender. Don't tell an offender to pay 10 million naira in fines when all he can afford is 50 naira. The law says if what he can afford is 50 naira, then sentence him to a fine of 50 naira, if you decide that a fine is applicable. In like manner, when you decide to grant bail, it should not be an illusion. You say to him, go and bring somebody resident within the jurisdiction when he doesn't know anybody in that jurisdiction. Apart from the fact that it was malicious to take him to that jurisdiction at all. You see the continuation of that malice. The system, and I appeal to our judges and magistrates to be watchful, because look, sometimes the political fights are taken into the courts. It's a street fight between politicians, but one of them is able to manipulate the system and they land in court. And he wants to use the court system as an ally in his fight against his opponent. The judge and the magistrate must be vigilant to ensure that they are not implicated in such a fight.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Before we proceed further on any question that one or two questions that are still outstanding here, I would like to make a few comments concerning today's topic. First of all, let me express my gratitude out of the MBA ICLE to you for coming down here today to do this. I know that I've been on you I've even turned to a pest when it comes to disturbing you on this matter to be part of this process. And for those of us who have listened to Learner Seek, the topic of today took a twist from the usual topic we've been doing for the past month. We started this whole thing, I think, on the 4th of May. The topic of today is an overview of the role of the legal practitioner. Essentially, Learner Seek gave a lecture on the philosophy of law. And that is why we see a lot of moralizing from Learner Seek with respect to the role of the society, the role of the lawyer, the role of the judges, and the role of the court, and the role of the prosecutor. So essentially, we dealt with the philosophy of law today because some of you have been asking this question on the chat room as to what the topic for today was. It's essentially the philosophy of law and what lawyers are expected to do to the courts, to the defendant, and of course to the society at large. And that is why Learner Seek's lecture was tilted towards this direction today. So we would like to still take a few questions. I can see that more questions have come on. We have some time till the closing time. So I would like to use the opportunity of having Learner Seek here to exhaust as much as possible his wealth of experience so that we can all benefit. But I can also see that my brother, Professor Nasir Ali USA, has also joined us. Perhaps he has one or two things to say before we proceed further. Nasir, are you on? Professor Nasiru? Okay. Maybe we'll catch up with him later. Let's see. There's a question here.
Yeah.
It says, sir, the rate at which EFCC are arresting our youths, arraign them on plea bargain, even though the particular youth is free from persecution, but he can now have a criminal sentence tag on him. What is your take?
Well, the Supreme Court has gone to the extent of saying that some of the crimes that the EFCC is prosecuting outside its jurisdiction. The courts have said so. But why are people resorting to the EFCC? They are resorting to the EFCC because other agencies seem to be failing. The EFCC is being overwhelmed with it's like going to a hospital where you think you can get a cure. And when you get there, they try their best. We must make other institutions more efficient. We must make them more responsive. If institutions like the EFCC, the ICPC are not going to be overwhelmed, they are overwhelmed precisely because they are perceived as being more efficient than the other bodies. Now, when the EFCC itself becomes overwhelmed, then you will see these kind of things happening.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, the EFCC is in danger of being overwhelmed right now.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
Miebaka Awonemika from Okrika branch, that should be in Rivers State, says, please, I have a matter I'm doing pro bono. Defendant, my client, is a young boy, not up to 20 years old, not well-to-do, and who does not even know how to speak and write in English. He was charged to court for cultism. His bail condition included 2 million naira amongst other conditions. Please, do I apply to the judge to vary the bail conditions?
You should do so. You should do so. You should do so. And I pray that the Lord will touch the heart of this judge to see that bail should be affordable. Bail should not be an illusion. It should not be an illusion. And bail is a constitutional right. It is constitutional. When you make it illusory, when you make it an illusion, when it is not affordable, it means that you are denying the individual a constitutional right. And what happens is that these people get confined. They are taken to prison. Some remain there for years. Some die in prison. And what is required is to train magistrates to know that, look, bail should not be an illusion. I look forward to a time when many of these matters can be solved even at the police level.
Thank you very much.
In the hope that there will be sincerity at the police level, there will be sincerity at the magisterial level. That's it.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
So, as a former Attorney General of the Federation, there's a particular question that has been asked. It's not on the Q&A platform, it's on the chat room, but I have run into it and I decided that it's very key that I bring it to your attention so that we can benefit from your views on this. It's from one Zainab Atoba. She wrote, Learned Sixer, government prosecutors are not provided with allowance for witnesses. Also, their welfare is very bad. No accommodation, no transport. Their lives are exposed. Whose duty is it to provide this? She's from Kaduna branch.
It is the duty of the state. It is the duty of the state. It is the duty of the state. The state can make this provision This nation is able to fund itself. If funds which are meant for public purposes are not stolen, we are very much able to fund the system. We can pay the right salaries. We can fund the educational system. We can pay the police. We can pay the prosecutors. We can pay the judges. If public funds are used for public purposes, we can suffice with what we are paid if the naira is not does not go on losing its value. It is disappearing in your hand all the time. It is.
That's a reality, sir. Thank you very much, sir. There's an anonymous attendee sent in this question. Sir, what is your view on law enforcement agencies prohibiting the use of mobile phones within their offices by anyone except them?
Well, I don't know what the situation is in those offices enabling them to make those rules. It is based on the experience they're having. There are people whom you're having a conversation with them and they are recording you. They're doing that. Somebody calls you on the phone and he's recording you. And after that, he plays it onto some other person. People are doing that. So if you go to a police station where they suspect that kind of conduct, and they say to you, don't bring your phone in here, I understand that perfectly.
Okay. I guess that questionnaire is not getting any joy from Leonard Sick.
Well, it depends on the experience that they are having. And I think you will agree, it must be your own experience that people come to you, you speak to them freely and frankly, and they are recording you all the time. They take it out and they play it in the social media. Come and hear this man.
That's becoming very common.
Yes, it's wrong.
Okay, these are very interesting questions, sir. What would a defense counsel do when court has dismissed a charge against the accused and the same accused is being held by government without challenging the dismissal order or refuse to or delay filing an appeal? This is a very common occurrence these days. I'm sure you are quite familiar with these tactics by some law enforcement agents. What's your view on it, sir?
Well, it's wrong. I appeal to them, I beg them, I urge them not to do that. You know, it's wrong. It's oppressive. You can't go on oppressing people in that way. It is wrong. It is completely wrong. They shouldn't go on doing that. Of course, this person may not have the means to go back to a court and say, look, enforce my fundamental rights. He goes to the court enforces the rights and says, look, release him. They release him, then they take him again. We can't go on like that. We can't. And look, quite apart from the law, permit me to say this, quite apart from the law, we are spiritual beings and we will account. We proceed on the illusion, on the basis of the illusion that we don't have to give account here. But you will one day give account to the Creator. You will. Be careful. When you are given an office, know that you will be called to account. You will, whether you like it or not. You may escape accounting here, but what about on the other side?
Okay.
Yes.
There's a question that I wanted to draw to your attention. It's a very interesting one. It says, I want to know the NS6 opinion on private investigators / experts as it exists in other crimes. Is this something that you think we are ripe enough as a country to start implementing? Although I know there are some private investigating companies anyway, but I don't think they are very ripe. So what's your view, sir?
Well, if it is done properly, why not? If it is done properly, I mean, if you don't begin to use it to blackmail people, because that kind of organization, if it is not regulated by law, can very easily lead to blackmail. But if it is intended to aid and facilitate the work of the police, because that kind of organization actually aids the work of the police. If they find out something that they can give to the police to undertake their prosecution, I have nothing against it. I support it. But if it leads to blackmail, then we have to take it with a grain of salt.
Thank you, sir. So you've spoken very much about the need for us to have competent people running institutions of states in order for the efficiency to come to fore. A question I just come in asking you, how can competent people be selected to enforce our laws accordingly? Do you have any tips you could share with us? We have a lot of government people here who may want to understand from you what your take is on how to identify competent people, more to say, so to say.
Yes, the identification of competent people begins with opening the boundaries of the states. The boundaries of the states are rigid. You are not from Abia, you can't work in Abia. You are not from Cross River, you can't work in Cross River. You are not from Delta, you can't work in Delta. The boundaries of the states are rigid. These rigid boundaries ensure that people who are not competent must get employment in their states. You know, we talk about globalization. Globalization means that, look, take away the boundaries for the import of goods, but not for the mobility of labor. Why? We must open the nation. People must feel free to live where they like, work where they like, live where they like, work where they like, serve their... I was born in Boku, in Benue State. I was not born in my village in Bekwara in Cross River. I was born in Boku. I have an Igbo name, Kanu. It's an Igbo name. I like it. That's how it should be. Labor must be mobile. If it is mobile, why not? Competent people will serve. If you go to my local government, all the staff of the local government come from the area. If you go to the secondary school in my village, virtually every child in that school comes from that village. How can they learn when they are not interacting with other people? The greatest problem of qualification and competence in the country today is coming from the fact that these boundaries of the states are rigid. We must set up a national integration commission. We have a federal character commission, but it is not enough. The federal character commission merely ensures that each state is able to fill its quota. But we need another commission, a commission that will integrate the nation so that we are actually one people.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
Professor Nasiru, are you here now? I don't want us to close without having the opportunity of you saying one or two words. Professor Nasiru? I don't know what maybe his network. I know he would have loved to say one or two words to Leonard Sick for his presence here. Okay, we'll continue the question and answer. I think we still have some few minutes. This question is from Ogaraya Messi. She said, "Greetings, Leonard Sick. What can be done about the unlimited exercise of jurisdiction by area courts in practice?" She gives examples of cost and criminal matters. Apparently, they must have been dabbling into criminal matters and awarding costs that are above their jurisdiction. I'm sure that is why she gave those examples. So what's your views on that?
You see, the reason why people love area courts is because they are very fast. You take somebody there, you get justice quickly. But sometimes you get injustice. But it's because they are fast. If people are going to be saved from being managed by being taken to those courts, these other courts must be efficient. The magistrates' courts, the high courts must be efficient. If you don't get justice quickly in these other courts, those courts, we need to expand the jurisdiction of the area courts and see to it that they are manned by trained lawyers. That's what we need to do. They are more efficient. They are faster. We need to expand their jurisdiction and staff them properly.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There's this interesting question from Saminu Ibrahim Aruna. He said, "Sir, this problem of corruption that the criminal justice system couldn't tackle, is it the system of government or the people running the system of the government that failed?" This from Kanoba. Very interesting. Is it the system of government or the people that are running the government?
It is the people. It is not the system. The system is not self-enforcing. The laws are not self-enforcing. The laws don't enforce themselves. The laws are enforced by human beings, and they bring their own experience and attitudes to bear on the system, on their enforcement. It is a problem of the human being. It's not a problem of the laws. I mean, if you take the first law that regulated the life of man, don't eat the forbidden fruit. What was wrong with that law? There was nothing wrong with it, but it was not being enforced. There were no people to enforce it. Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit. It's a problem. It's a human problem. The people. It has nothing to do with the laws. The laws, most of the laws are very, very good, but they are either not enforced or badly enforced because people bring in their own elements.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Kelechi Chinule from Port Harcourt branch says, "The Nigerian police has turned to a recovery agent in a jack of all trade. How can our courts check the excesses of the NPF and make them stay within their boundaries and stop being oppressive?" This is a common problem across the country, Lenesik. What's your take on this?
Again, we should equip the police force, pay them the right salaries, train them. You see, as they say, the poison of the part is the poison of the whole. You know, if the system is inefficient at some point, it will affect other points. Why do people go to the police force to enforce payment of debts, something like that? It is because those who are owing cannot pay. Those who are owing cannot pay because the government awards contracts and does not pay contractors. And somebody who innocently went and borrowed money to do a contract it becomes stranded. Then the lender goes to the police. That's how it is. If the system is not efficient all round, it will poison itself. The poison of the part is the poison of the whole.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, the official of NCSDC, is it not NSCDC? Anyway, I think it should be NSCDC, arrested an accused person in his state and remained in the custody for days, and subsequently was handed over to officials of Nigerian police force and was taken to Taraba State for trial on issues that was purely contractual. What are the remedies that are available to this person?
You see, we can go on reciting problems of this sort.
Yes.
They are infinite. People are being killed right now, every day, every week, every month. The problems are infinite, and they will continue to multiply as long as we don't have the right people in the right places. It will manifest in different ways in different places. That's the problem. We must, as a nation, make up our minds to do things correctly. As a nation, look, we blame the police. But what about lawyers? What about soldiers? What about teachers? What about doctors? You go to hospitals, the problems are there. It's everywhere. So we can't solve it in parts. What about the legislature? People complain about the legislature. What about the executive? So we must make up our minds as a nation to do things correctly.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
At this junction, we have reached the 2 o'clock mark, but I would not want us to close without calling on Professor Nasir Aliyu. He's indicated to me that he's here, is a co-coordinator of this series of criminal litigation with my humble self and other members of faculty. I would like to call on him now to say a few words, then we can have Mabel Ikeke do the closing. Professor Nasir, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Onyeke. Let us talk, we must sincerely appreciate and thank you for this well-informed and very educative paper. And I would say that we always have been yearning to have an opportunity to interact with the learned, who is our father, in fact, as our grandfather in this profession. I must say that the learned has said it all, that things we, of course, we expect nothing less, and we have my horizon. I believe with our other colleagues, both junior and sub, like me, must have learned a lot of things from what the United States has delivered. So I pray for God to give you more health, long life, so that you will continue to put your best also, and the industry that has been putting. That we know we are all looking on to people like you, sir, that we are always learning, and sometimes we get ourselves to find a case with you, sir, is done. Because I am personally interested in criminal education, and I'm dealing with it as a teacher also in law school, and I have taught it for the last 27 years. I've been teaching criminal education. So I would say that I have learned a lot, and I believe other colleagues who are here with me have learned a lot. We are most grateful, sir, and we appreciate it. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mabel, are you still with us? Mabel? I was hoping, and okay, good. You're back. So please, you can, I think you're muted. You're muted.
I've been listening from my phone. The network has been terrible. It rained terribly bad in Victoria Island this morning. Thank you very much, Leonard Silk. This has been one of the most interesting sessions. For me, one of the takeaways in this lesson today was, as a practitioner, I should practice even on my knees. It's so important that we can't alienate our practice from God, regardless of what our beliefs are. Thank you very much, Leonard, for taking out all your time. your precious time indeed, sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. And I'm sure that our colleagues are indeed very grateful for all the questions that we got rolling in today. We thank you so much. And for our faculty, we're indeed very grateful for taking your time out, for being with us. It's been a journey. What the experience, the wealth of knowledge from all of our facilitators. And from here, from the ICLE, we say thank you, thank you, thank you. We're very much grateful. And to all our participants, thank you for always turning up. Thank you for being with us. And we hope that it's been an enriching experience for you. We wish you all a very pleasant weekend. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
So to every one of us, this is the last of the series of the criminal litigation training. Today is the last day. And like Bebe rightly said, we thank everybody for participating. Once again, we thank Leonard Sik, Kano Agabi SAN for being our speaker for today. And we wish him the very best of good health and more years in the profession. To my co-coordinator of the faculty, Professor Nasiru, thank you very much. In the way we have, it's been a successful journey for 1 month of training, and we look forward to future trainings. For those who have been talking about slides, I think the chair of the MBA ICLE and other members of the MBA ICLE has already mentioned that now that the series has come to an end with today's proceedings, all of you who registered for this series will be given, the slides will be sent to your email addresses. The lecture given by the NSIC today, it will share it with us, and we will also share it with every one of us as well when sending the slides. So I'm sure NSIC would also avail us a copy of today's topic so that we can share it. I will use it as my Bible going forward to guide the way I practice the profession. I really enjoyed it. And once again, my most sincere thanks, NSIC, for your time. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.